So Trisha's going to drive this train, but I wanted to start because a lot of you may know, and some of you may not know, about our GeekWire 200 list. This is a ranking that we do of all of the privately held technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. And if you don't know this resource, I'd actually encourage you to check it out because it's a good way to get tabs on the companies that are not publicly traded here in the region. And there is a company there at the top that actually there's a debate over whether you guys should be at the top, and we should get to that in just a second. But there is DocuSign right at the top, and it really underscores just how large you've become, and frankly, how large you've become so quickly. Tom, for people who aren't familiar with DocuSign, give us your elevator pitch. Give us your 30 seconds if you were going out and raising money, which you don't really need to do at this
how
point.
many people have used DocuSign in the room?
There you go.
So that's how we raise money. No, we do something that is different than the way things have been done for 4,000 years. We allow people to create legally binding contracts through the internet. So no paper, no fax machines, no rekeying. And it fundamentally changes the velocity of a business when you don't have to deal with a paper trail. So, and it's something that it spans not just sort of the business you might think of like real estate or mortgage, but literally every business in the world has a paper problem. They have paper somewhere, they have some form, they have some process that's not automated because they need to deal with signatures and forms, et cetera. And by transforming, digitizing that manual process, they see enormous return. I mean, they see improved customer satisfaction, they see lower costs, they see, I mean, in the case of HP, for example, take their channels program, taking a process that took 28 days down to less than 1 hour. I mean, that changes your business completely. So, on the consumer side, how many people actually have DocuSign on their mobile phone?
You have iOS and Android
apps. And Windows, and this drives me crazy because it's the greatest application in the world. And guess how much it costs? $0. You can use DocuSign. It lets you sign anything anybody emails you. So if you ever get someone sending you an email saying, hey, print this out, fill in the form, sign it, and send it back, you can just open in, fill in the form on your phone, sign, and send it right back to them. No faxes, no paper, no nothing. There's about 3.5 million people doing that. We need it to be 300 million people. So it's a great thing. Next time I'm going to ask the question, put it on your phone. Believe me, it'll surprise you how amazing it is.
So I think the controversy over you being at the top of the list is that 12 years ago you founded DocuSign here in Seattle, but then you moved it to the San Francisco Bay Area.
We moved some of it to San Francisco.
Yes. The headquarters, though.
Yes.
And so I think that's the controversy. But in the meantime, you've seen this humongous amount of growth. I mean, 2 years ago, you had 300 employees. Just this morning, you were telling me you have 1,600. So what's the company culture like? How do things change when you grow that rapidly? Can you give us sort of insight into that?
Yeah, well, it's a little crazy, actually. We are all having a lot of fun because we're changing the world. And everybody, all of the members of the company feel so empowered because we're literally changing the way business works and the way people interact with themselves, different people on the internet. But I think recently the big culture shift has been an international one. We've done several acquisitions of companies in Brazil, in Israel, in France, and as we start to integrate those cultures, because it's required from a technology perspective to do business differently in different parts of the world, we start putting those cultures all together. You start to create something that we think is very important, and that is a DocuSign brand and a DocuSign feeling that is not, oh, that American company, but that company, I'm not really sure where they're headquartered. It just kind of feels like it's local to me. We need to be a very international company, and that's a huge change for an American company to be international. It's not a typical thing.
So you actually, as Tricia said, you founded the company here in Seattle in part because that's where your roots were. Why did you actually move it to San Francisco, and how quickly did you regret that decision?
Well, so I've moved back and forth between Seattle and the Bay Area 4 times now. So I can't make my mind up.
Yeah, exactly.
I love the Seattle area because it's so close to skiing and the lake and the sound, and it's just beautiful that way. I hate the rain. It wears on me. The Bay Area, I love the weather. I love the business climate. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of like Seattle times 10. It's just bigger. But it's the same pace from a technological perspective, it's just a larger market. But I hate the taxes there. It's unbelievably terrible. So I kind of weigh on each other, and I kind of bounce back and forth. The reason we opened an office in the Bay Area was to pull from more than one market, because we knew we were going to grow really fast, and we knew we needed to be in more than one place. And when we only had 2 offices, it was sort of a, who are you going to root for, the 49ers or the Seahawks, and it's sort of a them and us thing. But now that we have so many offices, there's no more them and us. It's literally, well, there's also, Paris, and there's also the UK, and it's leveled things out quite a bit.
Right, and there's like 500 employees here in Seattle and 300 in San Francisco. So
the
that
largest
leaves-
employee base is here.
Right. So of all your offices
Yes.
internationally, San Francisco, Seattle is your largest base. And frankly, that's what goes into our thinking on the GeekWire 200 list. You were founded here. Your biggest office is here. Sure, the headquarters is technically in San Francisco, but we consider you ours.
Well, we consider
sorry.
Seattle home too.
Yeah.
We really
Yeah.
do. We feel like we're a Seattle company. We have the same personality we had when we were in Seattle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how do you feel about all the Bay Area companies coming to Seattle and opening up engineering offices here?
I don't think they should be able to do that.
Has it made it tougher? Has it made it tougher?
Well,
for you guys?
I mean, the Bay Area is so competitive. It would be nice if that was the only really competitive market, but
Yeah.
Seattle's becoming very competitive as well. So, it's not something that we see that much because we're kind of the reverse. But no, the Seattle market has become more and more competitive because people are coming here more and more. San Francisco is incredibly competitive. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So in May, you raised $278 million in a single round.
We did.
That valued the company at $3 billion, approximately, making it the 21st most valuable privately held technology company in the U.S. What kind of pressure comes along with raising that kind of money? And then maybe, I don't know, do we get to call you a Seattle unicorn? Because you would be the only one if
Only one over $1 billion valuation.
the
Right.
only company in Seattle over $1 billion.
Is there pressure? I don't know that those numbers increase the pressure. I mean, I think the pressure is applied by our drive to do what we want to do. So that really hasn't changed it. We now have more resources to go do that. But the fact is the private markets are very attractive right now. They were and they are. They continue to be. So funding our expansion internationally, funding the platform expansion, that's really what that's about. And so we feel like we want to go really fast. We now have the resources to go really fast. I mean, until you're a profitable company, you really owe your investors everything. So we've been running the company like that since I started it, though, so there's no big change. The fact that the numbers are huge is sort of interesting, but it's just a bigger number. I mean, from our perspective, it's not something that happened fast, right? This is something we've been working on for 12 years. Every year it increments bigger and bigger and bigger. So just the fact that people just noticed that, wow, this is a $3 billion company, we've seen the curve the whole time, so it's not a shocker.
Yeah. So when you founded the company in 2003, you made a very specific decision to not be the CEO, which I think is a fascinating move because it's just almost like a reflex. Hey, I started this thing, I'm in charge. But this was based actually on your previous experience with one of your prior startups. I think some of the people in the room who are running their own startups or thinking about running a startup would love to hear the thinking that went into your decision.
Yeah, so it's an interesting experiment. And so the last company I started and ran, I'm very focused and have a lot of attention focused on the product, customer, and market fit. I'm very, I want to get into details on that stuff. So I drive from a product perspective, I drive from the market perspective, and when I'm running a company, my last company, and getting sort of over the engineering team and over the product team continually, they're kind of like, can you leave us alone? I thought you hired us because we're good. And they were good. But I was so into that stuff, and I was so not like, I don't really want to have another board conversation about raising money. That's administrivia. So this time, I decided to say, well, this time I'm going to remain as a founder and really the strategy that drives the company forward, but not be the operational CEO. And it's been a very interesting ride. It's allowed me to focus on the product and keep the vision laser focused. But it also has detriments too. When you're not running the company, you can't just say we're turning left and you go left. You have to convince other people to do that. But I think for where we are now, people keep saying 12 years, you're still doing it. It's crazy. That's a long time. And it's because I have the ability to continually push the product forward. And if you look at where we started, we really started trying to get a signature to happen electronically in a way that people would sort of believe it was a signature and feel comfortable. But very quickly after we figured that out, our customers came back and said, this is great, but it's not enough. We need this document to be filled out. The data has to be populated. We need to collect information. It has to come back into these systems. We need to manage the document lifecycle. So we ended up building a lot of technology around document management, about forms technology, around authentication. So we expanded the platform dramatically. And then 2 or 3 years ago, they came back and said, this is awesome. We can manage this entire document lifecycle, but now we need to manage the entire transaction. All of these documents are related to these people, is related to this data. We want the entire transaction to be digital. And then when you go international, you find out that, oh, every country has a little bit of a different spin on what an identity is and what a signature is. So over the last 12 years, I've had the ability to continually expand what we're doing, expand the value proposition to our customer, and it's been a startup for me the whole time.
Okay. And maybe to that point, 4 years ago, you actually made the decision to stop charging for the signature aspect.
Yeah, we came out with the product I just asked if anybody had. And signing is free. Just if all you need to sign a document electronically, we give that away, with the added benefit that the signature that's generated in DocuSign is actually binding your identity to the document in a way that would be legally effective. So we give that away. It's actually a good marketing vehicle. I mean, big customers realize that their customers are using DocuSign.
You were making money off that.
Not just signing, not really.
Not really?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
so it wasn't a huge...
No, the low end of the market is not a place we think you make a lot of money. Where we make money is with larger customers who are automating business processes on our platform. So if you go to a T-Mobile store and buy a phone, the infrastructure they're using is DocuSign. From the signature part, which you might see, all the way to the data infrastructure that connects supplier networks and stuff like that. So businesses buy a digital transaction management platform, and that's where you see dramatic ROI, and those are big iron kind of things that they're doing. The consumer side, which we're going to ramp up a lot this next year, is more about engaging a consumer in just the part that they're doing. And that we give away for free, and we do it with some really great apps.
So there are some skeptics out there about DocuSign and about electronic signatures in general. There was a report by Forrester Research that estimated the market at right around $500 million annually, and then they looked at your valuation, and the analyst said, if you do the math, there's no way the amount of money put into DocuSign could be justified doing the signature part of the process. What do you say to that analyst?
Well, I totally agree. We give the signature away.
Right, absolutely.
So the annual revenues going forward,
I think for the market,
zero.
I know well, it's not true. There are people actually charging for just signing, and there are not very many of them. I think the whole market is not a signature market, it's a digital transaction management market. And analysts will call that a $30 billion market. Because that's a much bigger thing. That's combining identity management with signature management with data management in a way to take a business process end to end digitally. Forrester also calls that smart process applications. So if you read their other research about other areas they look at, can you take a process that is paper-based and involves people and data and completely digitize it, which is what we call DTM. They call that smart process application, and they call that about a $30 billion market.
Okay. So where do you take this long term? I mean, is there a larger vision from a product perspective at DocuSign that you're pursuing that might even go beyond document management and e-signatures into other areas that are tangential?
Sure. I mean, I think if you look at our expansion, what we're doing right now is we're spending a lot of time internationally, because the fabric underneath this visible network is what I call a trust network. And that is, in every country, there's a different definition of what a signature is, what an identity is, and how data needs to be managed securely. So we're sort of going country to country and building out this network so you can deploy an application on the DocuSign platform, and it will actually work anywhere in the world. Very much like what Visa did when they built their network. So before Visa, if you wanted to move money in checks, you had to physically move money in checks. And they went literally country to country. If you read their story, it's fascinating. And they made a network that allowed you to use a Visa card, and no matter what country you're in, you just use it and it works. You don't have to worry about the financial rules in that country. You don't have to worry about exchange rates. You just use it and it works. So same thing for us. You're going to do a digital transaction for mortgage or insurance or real estate or whatever, it'll just work. In fact, we believe, and we're seeing, companies starting to build applications on our network to do this. And so ultimately, what you'd see is a number of applications that are running on the DocuSign network that allow these trusted transactions to happen. And then sort of chapter 3, in order to do a trusted transaction, you need to know what the identity is of the person that you're dealing with. And so in DocuSign, we have about 75 million unique identities in our network today, and we'll add 100,000 more today. There is a trust graph associated with every single person in our network. And that trust graph can be expanded and used to start to create a very trustworthy interconnection between people in our network. And in the future, we really believe that in cyberspace, your identity is incredibly important for seamless and frictionless transactions. And so we will allow our customers to start creating an identity with depth and persistence that will allow them to do business globally without having to re-authenticate all the time and really establish that identity, which could be used to sign a document, but it also could be used to, rent a condo on Airbnb or do anything else.
Yeah.
So sometimes it feels like we're still stuck in chapter 1, though, right? I mean, if anyone's bought a house recently, you get 6,000 pages that you have to sign in person at your house with an escrow agent. So is that something that DocuSign can solve?
Yes, it is. So if you buy a house, you can go through the process of signing up with your real estate agent, going through the purchase and sale, all the upfront stuff can be completely done through DocuSign, on your phone even, remotely around the world. It's when you get to closing your mortgage, the closing table is where you start to see the big stack of paper. And that is a next target for us, but it's not really a technology problem. That problem is because you've got an escrow company and a title company and all these people who are steeped in paper. It's the way their businesses are structured and work. And really, we think the solution there is to be working with our big partners, Bank of America, and we have 800 credit unions, to say, enough, we need to make this process digital. Fannie Mae's done research and found that it adds $3,000 in cost, probably borne by the consumer. And so it's going to take an industry-wide push to make it happen because there's so many people with a vested interest in paper on that closing table. So it's more of a cultural thing. So we could roll the technology out tomorrow, put mortgage in the front of it, and it would still have the same problem. It's going to take a whole industry effort.
Speaking of cultural things, there is sort of this mental transformation people have to make from going to signing a piece of paper in person to signing on the internet. You were talking earlier to me about how people actually just don't feel that's as legally binding when you make up something online versus do it in person.
Yeah, there was a research paper done recently. I don't remember who did it, but they were studying the sort of cultural feeling of clicking a box or typing your name in a box and saying, when people do that, they don't actually feel like, this isn't really real, it's okay if I cheat. And it's not. It's technically, according to the law, could be a signature. It might not be, but there's the whole reason we designed the product the way we did is to, when you sign something in DocuSign, you're actually creating your signature. You're either drawing it or you're adopting it. You're securing that with your credentials, and then you're putting it in the document on the dotted line and you're initialing. You're going through the exact same sort of process you do with paper. So, because we think it's important to connect the cultural aspect of signing with the document as well. And in our research, we show the same thing they did. If you just check a box, people don't take it seriously. But if you put your signature on the document and then it's all bound and secured, they think they signed something, and they actually did.
And to another point you were making earlier, there's actually some apps in the App Store that you can download.
Yes.
That are not legally binding.
Yeah,
What's the difference between DocuSign
the secret and the scary part is that there are a bunch of apps out there I call Scribbling, which is, I can scribble my name and they can paste it into a document, but there's no connection to my identity being made. There's no securing of that document. So if you tamper with it later, you wouldn't be able to tell.
Well, one of them is made by Apple. It's the Apple Preview app. I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's I've known people who've used that.
Yes.
It's hackable.
If you never have to go to court, it'll probably be okay. But if you went to court, the courts would very quickly say, why is this an authentic tool or authentic document? And it would be no proof, not admissible as evidence. So.
Well, but then again, your actual signature in the physical world is not digitally linked to your, so you're actually,
But
you're
in
not
the
just-
physical world,
yeah.
that's important. In the physical world, when you sign on a piece of paper, the reason that they can actually take that to court is you have the original. You can see it broke to paper fibers. Then they can say that signature is attached to this document. You can tell it's not a photocopy. That's how they validate those documents, those signatures. When you move to the digital world and you take a picture of that signature and duplicate it a million times and put it wherever you want, all of that breaks down.
Gotcha.
You've got to link the identity to the task. That's really underneath what's happening is, here's a set of things I agree to. I'm connecting that digitally to my identity in a way you can't break. That's what a digital agreement is about. And without that veracity, you have nothing.
Yeah.
I still want them to develop the Selfie autograph app, where
Yes.
you take a picture with a famous person and then get it electronically signed by that famous
Is it,
person.
okay.
Yeah, right.
Maybe
Well,
this
we
is your
did- we-
expansion.
we had a hackathon actually, and one of our developer teams built that.
Yeah.
So the idea
I
was,
want you to actually come out with that. Yeah.
well, it's a great idea for we have companies that are actually building applications on our platform. So that's one that could be built. We already proved it could be done. I mean, you take a picture and then hand it to somebody, your famous person, sign with their DocuSign signature, which a lot of them have, by the way. It's kind of crazy. The other one was actually Kindle Sign, which is actually the ability to have a Kindle book and then send it to the author to sign electronically. So there's a lot of fun stuff that can be done that too.
Yeah. And then, since this is a pretty geeky crowd, maybe some of your extracurricular activities would be interesting to people here. But Tom really likes to shoot off rockets, and these are not little hobby rockets that you buy at a store and you put together.
It started that way.
Okay.
No, we go to the Black Rock Desert about 3 or 4 weeks after Burning Man, and there's a bunch of crazy people who go there and they fly high-power rockets from anywhere from 5,000 or 10,000 feet to over 100,000 feet. And these are enormous projects. They're incredibly exciting to see go. A lot of them, I guess, seeing a successful project is awesome, but it's also kind of fun when one just detonates at about 2,000 feet. It's pretty cool.
You just lose how much money on that?
Oh yeah, there's thousands of dollars. We were actually there for the first amateur space shot from the Black Rock Desert, and it was successful. It made it to 72 nautical miles, and was recovered about 20 days later. But it's pretty impressive.
Tom's also a pretty good sport. I interviewed him actually on this exact stage a few months ago in front of 1,000 of your employees.
That's right.
And I called him a control freak, and he took it really well.
So wait, are you? Are you a control freak?
I don't think I am, but who knows?
It's because you don't like roller coasters
No,
because you're not in control.
no, I don't like roller coasters. Terrify me.
But mountain biking,
Well, motocross is great.
windsurfing,
Windsurfing is great. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
if I'm driving it, it's fine.
if he's driving, which is kind of how you are at DocuSign too, right?
So are there any business lessons that you draw from, in particular, rocketry that you can apply, or analogies to the business
Well,
world?
I
that you
think it's interesting. Rocketry feels like starting a business. I mean, you think about when you build a rocket, you're taking as much control as you can over what you can take control over before you fly it. And then you have to be able to have thought through all the things that might break. And if it's successful, that's great. If it's not, you start over and do it again. Because I think the key in business is nothing succeeds like persistence. It's my favorite saying, because if you really want to get something done, if you keep trying, you'll eventually get there. Or you'll die, in which case you had a fun life trying to get somewhere.
Yeah.
But
I hope you
it's
don't
actually true.
die
You will get
taking
there.
DocuSign to the next level.
Will I die doing it? No, I won't die. No. It's happening way too fast for that.
So before we conclude here, I want to circle back. We talked a little bit at the very beginning about some of your funding and the fact that you just had another big round that you raised recently at a $3 billion valuation. What about an IPO? I know you get this question all the time, and we can't let you leave the stage without giving us the scoop on when you're going to be filing your S1 to go public here. Is that, seriously, is that in the cards for DocuSign, or do you just see yourself becoming and staying a very,
There
very
has to
large...
be an exit, right?
Yeah, there has to be an exit.
That's what people keep saying. Exit. I get confused when they say that. It's like, so exit means that we leave, right? I mean,
Your investors do,
a
not you.
public financing is a financing round. So we need money to grow the business at the pace we are. We've decided not to try to set back and be profitable. We're growing much faster because of it. But the public market is a source of funds. And if the timing is right and the conditions are right, it can be a fantastic place to raise money. But that's all it is. It's a place to raise money. And it's one of those things
It's
that you
also
could
an
say.
exit for your investors, though,
Sure,
even if you
sure.
aren't exiting.
Sure. But if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, I mean, you could go public whenever, there's lots of times you go public. But for us, the kinds of things we're doing, investing in foreign markets and investing in technology is very esoteric and people may never understand. It's much easier to do that when you're private than it is when you're public. So we want to get as much of the big lifting out of the way, because when you're in the public market, then you got to explain everything and it has to hold together. So, I think at some point it makes lots of sense, but when, and of course we can't answer that.
So we actually have 2 questions that we've been asking every speaker, and we're going to compare the answers at the end. The first is, do you feel or are you worried about any possibility of there being a tech bubble in terms of the valuations of companies? I mean, you're at $3 billion. Is that a concern for you at all?
Well, for us, the valuation we have based on the revenue we have is actually pretty rational. I think there are places in the market where the valuations are very different than ours compared to revenue.
What is your revenue?
That's
We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
But it's much more rational than a lot of these folks.
Yeah.
So I do think there is a bubble, but I think there's typically bubbles happening. I think the big question is, will the bubble pop? That's the question.
Yeah.
And I think some of them might. I mean, there are some pretty crazy valuations out there, and then there are some that are not crazy. So.
And you're in the latter camp.
I think when
you're
the numbers come
more-
out, they won't think it's a bubble.
You're more valuable than Lyft, Slack, or Instacart.
Yeah, I'm sure we have more revenue than them.
Yeah. And then the other question is, if you look out 3 years to 2018, in your industry or in another area, what will be the most important fundamental technology of that particular year, if you were to look out?
Yeah, well, for us, it's a global identity network, which we're building. I think if you just sit back and think about technology itself, I think some of the stuff that I'm kind of watching is kind of amazing, is the combination you're seeing in medicine and biometric stuff. I mean, you're seeing contact lenses that can replace the retina in your eye and have much more acuity than the human being can have. That's already looking like it's going to be FDA approved in the next couple or 3 years. When you start to see the combination of technology applied to the human being itself, you see some amazing things happening. And in that 2018 timeframe, that's going to be some big headlines there, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Tom Gonser from DocuSign, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks very much.
And
Thank
thanks,
you.
Tricia. This was great.